Hello and welcome to this update to Sprite Editor, also known as Spred64. This is version 0.1.3.2 and there's been some minor updates. The UI is still a little bit of a clusterfest, but it works and that's the point. There's a little bit of text information here and there about shortcut keys and things like that. Now I've done some changes to the file system, which means it messes up some older composite data. Keeps your sprites fine, but there's some little offsets that happen. They shift either up here or down here and other things. So you can fix that by either using Shift and L to see if that works, or more recently Alt and L might fix that if you didn't catch one of these. As soon as you see that it looks good, just resave it as a new file, and that's the way forward. That will eventually phase out because more and more people will buy this or use it. So there's a little bit of information about the compositor here as well, and I'm going to show you that in a second. So I've supplied from the itch page. I'll just jump over to that and show you a little bit of, where are we? Here. So if I view the page there, you'll see that I have supplied another file. I don't know if it shows you it here. Let's see more information. But if you do buy now, it might show you. Yeah, you get this little mix demo. So I'm just going to load that up. I'll show you what that is. So I'll just do the little open folder here and then mix demo, and you can see that's what I'd been making in the video. Now you'll see all these little IDs and things. These are just like for the extra overlays. So this one means that layer 1's been used, and a 2 here. I think that's for this little green highlighting, as you see there. So in some cases, like I've used 3 layers here. This is kind of unrealistic to what you would do on an actual Commodore machine, because it's limited to how many sprites it can show. Even with multiplexing, it can only show 8 sprites in total in a horizontal sprite line. The kind of raster for the sprites, and this is a Windows editor, so you don't really see that, but it's really just for fun to see how sprites would look if you layered them up using that very same system. And maybe one day someone will come up with a reason for this kind of thing. But if you count the number of sprites here, including the base, so you got 1, 2, 3, 4 for the base, and then 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That would be 10 sprites. But in reality, maybe you just have one of these guys or something, or chop them up into 2 different areas, like down the bottom right, have your text, and the top left and have your text if there was some sort of robot battle or something like that. Anyway, so that is that's the compositor area there, and if you want to hide the extra info, just click the little eye up here, and you can see that. You can right click to choose the background color. In this case, you know, I've gone for the fixed background color of light grey because it ties in with the sprites, and if this was a static image, I would just be putting sort of black or white text over the spaces. It doesn't matter anyway, it's just the sprite editor. It's up to you how you use these things. So I'm going to just make a new file by pressing F6. For now, that's just reset. It tells you here, escape to quit, or F6 to restart. And I can do different things here. I can stretch sprites and stuff, but I'd rather show you that from scratch. So F6 is going to clear everything, and you basically start again. So this is your sprite bank. I only hold 64 sprites in here just because it's kind of neater. I don't want to have like all the different sprites and it using up extra memory and things like that. I want to keep it quite compact, and working on 64 sprites at a time kind of is a good way to compartmentalize your projects instead of having everything in here. So it's more likely you're going to work on a main character and use all these up. So something I have been working on, in fact I'm going to load that up just to show you as a little kind of fun project. I'm just trying to reimagine Turrican if it was remade, and I've just been working on this little guy. I put in these background sprites just for an example of what it looked like in the background, but in reality these wouldn't really be done with sprites. These would be done with character sets or bitmaps. but it just gives me a kind of context of how this could look. So these are the sprites. They're built up with the monochromatic color. You can switch that here, and you see it's, you know, it doesn't break the sprite or anything like that. It just switches the way that it reads the pixels, exactly how the Commodore does it. And you know, all this data that this generates is compatible with you know, Commodore. So if you're using something like C64 Studio, you can load this data in and it'll bring up all your sprites just looking like these. So I've used a single sprite here to do the color information. If I just plop this down, let's just put it on layer 3 to show you what I mean. And while I hover over this sprite, if I do Shift and Y, it stretches it vertically, and Shift and X will stretch it horizontally. But basically, I can use that as an underlay for this sprite information. So I'm just going to go to a new frame just to give you an idea. So I can click this down. Now it shows that I'm on layer 3, so I'm just going to click this to go down to layer 1. Now anything that's not on layer 0 basically gets the background removed based on the bottom left pixel. If I put a black pixel in here, the thing's going to become like this, kind of inverted and kind of weird looking, because it detects this color here and calls it the background, but as soon as I put that in there, it's calling black the background, and therefore it's transparent. Now that only happens on anything on layer 1, 2, 3 or 4, purely for the reason that it's an overlay, and it's kind of a workaround for now until I think of something better, but it works. You just have to avoid that bottom left pixel, simple as that. And yeah, and most of the time that's fine. So there's the high res 2-part sprite put on layer 1. Now I can click that little Y or press tab and it shows me layer 1 ID 0, so that's number 0 there, and layer 1 ID 8, that's number 8, so it goes 0 to 7, 8 to 15. I'll probably, I'm going to add labels to these at some point, especially when you use the UI info. That way I can add all the numbers up here, just so that you know which one's which. I always find myself going back and counting. So it's a work in progress. It's only been a couple of weeks of development so far. So I'm going to go down to layer 0, either use the mouse wheel, or you can use S or W to go up and down, or up and down arrow keys to go up and down, or these two buttons. So there's loads of options. So put that there, and I'm just going to click that down and then do Shift and Y. So it's sensitive to the layer that you're on and the tile that you're hovering over. It's just automatic. So if I was to go on layer 1 and do Shift and X, I'm going to stretch these legs. If I hover over this one, Shift X, and I go down to layer 0 and do Shift X, you can see I've completely stretched that sprite out. So that is how that works, and that's how you start to composite your sprites up. There's no limit to the compositing side other than the 5 layers. So if you go up, it only gives you well, 4 extra composite layers over the base, and in most cases that's fine. I don't see you using the full 8 sprites for one sprite. It's very unlikely that you would do that. So that is pretty much the long and the short of it. To build up frames, all you're doing is, like, you can use this button to copy, so frame 8 to frame 9, I just click that button. So frame 8 and 9 are now the same. You can go back and forward with this button, or use A and D, so it's just like arrow keys, or left and right arrow keys. And then you can make a change, so like this one, I can then go up to layer 1, right click that, place that one down. I have to do Shift X on it because it resets itself. Down here, choose the same legs, Shift X, and then I think it uses this sprite underneath, so I'll just right click that, click it down, Shift X and Shift Y, and now that's now, oh, there we go. So it's 9, 8 and 9, and that's it's got a little kind of poogie there. So if you want to see that animated, you basically just choose the start frame and end frame, and then you can play that. So if I go back to the start here, so pressing stop goes back to frame 0. It's just a convenient thing because I found that was useful. And so we go to layer frame 6. So start at 0 and go to 6, and I'll play that. you see how that looks. You can speed it up with these two buttons, so the one on the right goes faster and the one on the left goes slower. Sometimes it flashes like this. I think it's just a little numbers leaking out and going a frame too many, so I need to figure out what that is, but it's no big deal to fix. So, it'd be great to add sound effects to this, but yeah, for now I only have my voice. So that is pretty much it. You just save the file, and let's call this toot, and I'll show you how that file looks. I'm going to jump into Windows. Let's go find that file, and it saves it as a text file. It's got loads of information in there. Tells you the version, what the background color you chose, the main multicolor 1, multicolor 2, the sprite ID, whether it's using high res or multicolor, so 0 is high res, the unique color, in this case black. So that's your pen colors, 0 to 15, and then this is your byte data. So that is basically your sprite right there in groups of 3, so that's each line. That's all each line there, and I think yeah, I think that's pretty much that. There might be an extra, the 64th bit or byte that doesn't get used, so I think that's there. So there's your sprite IDs, whether it's using multicolor or not. So it loads all up. That's the whole 64 there. And then if you scroll down, this is all compositing data information. So it's mainly used for spread, but you can be used elsewhere if you can read this. This value is basically the sprite ID. This value is the, I forget now, the layer ID. This is the sprite ID, and this is offset information or things like that. But if you keep scrolling down to anything that you've put something into, it will tell you if you've used any offset stuff. So in this case, I've offset on X and nothing on Y. So it's using layer 1, sprite ID 57, and also there's the stretch information. That's what these are, X stretch and Y stretch, and there is some hidden characters here that you don't see that are involved in determining the position, but for some reason they don't always show up in the text file, and it doesn't matter, it still reads them in. I think it's just because they're really obscure ASCII characters and this font can't cope with it. So there is extra information in there, but it tells you what those are anyway, based on the top left tile being 0. So if you imagine up here is 0, so these have been offset, and I've just like done all this for fun, just made this little kind of layout look like a little game. But the sprite data is there. Once you bring that into your assembler or your game making tool that you're using for Commodore games, the sprite data is there, and it's up to you to recomposite these in code and use maybe a lookup table for each sprite reference and things like that. Thanks for watching this video. Please support me by jumping over to Itch and paying the price of a coffee or less to help keep me, working on this. I've raised about, I don't know, $50 or something so far. I usually put in here what I've raised and how many copies I've sold and the top donation, and just to keep people kind of up to date with how well this is selling, things like that. You will get a sneak preview if you're part of the Commodore 64 database. I do put kind of older builds in there that are free, but this is where you get the exclusive updates faster. Only update the database, the Commodore Scene database, every so often, and that's really for the sceners to use, and hopefully they produce good stuff and it helps some sales here. I hope you enjoy using it, and I'd love to see what you make, and feel free to post a reply to the page here and show me what you've made, some sort of comment and link to any images. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll catch you in the next video. Bye.